SaintsFootballTalk.com, Ellias J Williams here. Uh, we're going to take a look at this. We're going to do a reaction for Nick and Trip discussing, do the Saints have to add another edge rusher? And I have my thoughts on that. I'll give you my reasons why, but we'll let these guys kick it off first, and then we'll chime in.
And our first topic today is presented by PJs because we start every day with PJs, and you should too. We're here at the location on Airline. Come check them out and get your day started with them. So, our first topic: how urgent is the Saints' need for another edge rusher? Should they go into free agency, the draft, both? What's your plan of attack here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you need to know what you're going to do with Cam Jordan, and for that matter, I guess Chris Rumpf. But those guys are your third and fourth if you bring them back. Chase Young's going to be a part of the equation. I'm almost positive Carl Granderson's going to be part of the equation unless you're talking trade there. I don't see why you would necessarily right now. So I like the draft best, and I like the idea of considering all those guys that could possibly be there at 8. But we've been talking about this at other positions like running back. Like, okay, what if you don't get Jeremiah Love? Do you want it to be Kenneth Walker? Do you want it to be? I'm a little torn. I wish I knew I was going to draft one, and then I could just leave it alone in free agency. But I think you got to add. I think you got to add someone, and if you wait that long, and it just doesn't materialize at pick 8 or pick 42, then I think you've left probably the most important position that is not completely filled. I mean, they have needs everywhere. They have needs at guard. They have needs at running back. They have needs at receiver. I'd hate it if they didn't add to this group, but I don't need to jump on Bradley Chubb. I don't know that I need to pay what it costs to get the 30-somethings like Bosa or Khalil Mack. I kind of like some of the younger guys, some of the 25-year-old guys, Asai and things like that, but they're all going to cost $25 million. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to spend $25 million to fill that edge rusher need. I wish I knew I could do it in the draft.
I wouldn't mind the 1-year rental, like one of the older guys, if you can get them, because you kind of got to fill it. And if you don't have a permanent solution, I'd rather just have a temporary solution than a long-term mediocre solution that I really can't get in or out of. That would kind of be a little bit frustrating.
So I love the way Sean Payton would refer to a pass rusher rather than making a making it about edge rusher. Uh, and because when everybody thinks about edge, that's where their mind goes to for pass rusher. My thoughts on this are simple. When you look statistically at the way this defense was run last year, right? The defensive interior had 2,636 snaps. Of those, 1,293 of them were pass rush snaps, so about 49%. The other 50% were run defense snaps at 1,336. Okay? The edge snaps were 2,278, right? Run defense, 996, that's 43%. Pass rush snaps, 1,064, 46%. Coverage snaps were 218 at 9%. So in other words, 2,357 pass rush snaps total. 54% of those were from the defensive interior. 45% were from the edge. The Saints need another pass rusher, but it needs to come from the interior defensive line because those guys actually had more pass rush snaps last year. You have to allocate resources to where it's necessary. Even if you want to further break it down, Carl Granderson and Chris Rumpf primarily were run defenders, pass rushers, but they also dropped into coverage a significant amount of the time. There are a number of snaps that saw Carl Granderson drop into coverage, and 6'3", 297-pound or more Jonathan Bullard was left to rush the right tackle and got zero push, right? So this is where, to me, if you're looking at adding a pass rusher, I'm looking at adding someone like a John Franklin Myers from the Broncos, putting him over at that left defensive end position, and now you have someone that will be rushing the passer more while you still have your top four guys. Because fact of the matter is that Chris Rumpf was less of a pass rusher, more of a run stopper. He was used more in run stop, and then along with having those coverage snaps. Same thing happened with Carl Granderson. Cam and Chase Young were your primary pass rushers, meaning they did not drop into coverage nearly as much as Rumpf and Granderson. So if you're going to bring back Cam Jordan next year as your number three, you can get away with letting Chris Rumpf walk and using maybe a third or fourth rounder there because Chris Rumpf wasn't primarily used as your pass rusher in most of those situations. Arguably, Jonathan Bullard had more pass rush snaps. So again, allocating as far as do they need another edge rusher? No. Would they want another edge rusher outside of Cam Jordan, which I'm pretty sure he's coming back? Absolutely, but it's not a pressing need.
Overall, this is a draft though where I think you can wait until the third round and maybe get a rotational player, someone in there. Like it is deep on edge rushers, so if you just need depth. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice for them to get a headliner. But the problem with this team is they need headliners at so many
They
positions.
do. They really do.
So yeah, you can't address them all. I don't know how I prioritize them. But it's just get the best guy really at any one of those spots. But this is one where I'd be expensive. Be willing to put an expensive 1-year band-aid on it because it could be something that turns your tides. And if you can get one of these vets, if you can bring in, man, like Staley loves Khalil Mack. Like I don't know where he's at in his career, but like if you can get one of those guys on a 1-year rental type thing, I'm willing to overpay a little bit, I think, just to plug that hole and then maybe try to strike again next year with a younger, more long-term option.
Do you have any thoughts on the 25-year-old guys range? Joseph Asai.
Yep. See, I wouldn't, if you're gonna bring back Cam, unless you're going to let Cam walk and bring back Khalil Mack. I just don't see the purpose in having that many edge rushers when you're rushing more from the defensive interior. Another issue is if you look at Staley's defense, that defense is a wide nine alignment, right? The edge rushers go wide. Well, the edge rushers' jobs are extremely easy because of the alignment, meaning you can take some of the value off of the edge rush talent. Even if you look at his time with the Rams, who was the primary edge rusher for the Rams? There was only one. And if you could think about his name, say it. But he was the only edge rusher that the Rams had. The rest of those guys that they had on the edge or as outside linebackers were more hybrid coverage players because Staley likes to drop his linebackers randomly. He doesn't drop his defensive linemen. So that front three, they're typically consistently rushing where one edge rusher is rushing and then you may have one that will drop. But more often than not, they're rushing four, right? But they alternate between the linebackers. And then every now and again, he may mix in a 5-man rush where you get the 3 defensive linemen going plus the 2 edge guys. But a lot of times they're dropping that guy. So again, I don't feel like they have to force edge rusher, but they do need another pressure player. to be added to that. And if you're going to spend the money, again, someone like John Franklin Myers, I would even take someone like Tim Settle for the Texans. Another three down lineman guy, right at about 28, 29, little bit younger, but these guys can help push the pocket because nothing helps edge rush pressure more than if the quarterback doesn't have anywhere to step up. And there were a lot of times there was no interior pressure. Even with Brian Brzee, there wasn't much consistent interior pressure last year. You fix that interior pressure, and the edge guys will look better.
Cincinnati, Odafe Owe, Boy Mafe, Quiddy Pay. Bradley Chubb is like 29, I think.
That
Josh
doesn't bother me.
Uche,
29 doesn't bother me.
yeah. But do you have any opinions on those? Is there anyone you love? I remember the one year we liked Greenard, and he ended up making a lot of money. But we knew Greenard fit what DA wanted because Greenard was that classic big defensive end who could also play on rundowns. I think it's a little more wide open with Staley, but that's the range I'd like to be in. But I feel like three teams are going to miss on that range, and one team's going to hit probably because they're all probably going to get paid more than they should.
Save during the Best Buy President's Day sale.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing I don't want to do is pay a ton of money for like another Carl Granderson level player. Like, so it needs to be plus that. I think to a certain degree. I'm willing to spend money though. Like they have money, they have cap space. Like I don't have to build my whole team, on whatever. I don't need to get the Columbia House shipment and not pay for it. Like I can go buy my CDs like if I need to. So I'm okay with paying for what they get. I just want to make sure they're paying for what they want, and it isn't. They're just getting whatever Columbia House is offering. That I'm going to the store, I'm picking it out. It's my selection. I'm buying it. It's what I want to have, and I don't want to just be doing it from a position of weakness. So. I don't need to force a 26-year-old at a certain price because I don't want to spend more for 1 year for a 31-year-old, 32-year-old, whatever's going to answer my question this year. I just want to make sure I'm not spending money that doesn't support my long-term plan.
Let me ask you this about that position though, compared to some of the other need positions. Let's just say free agency is ridiculous. Let's say Khalil Mack costs way too much. Trey Hendrickson costs way too much. Bradley Chubb costs way too much. The young guys cost too much. So you're like, pass. And then the draft comes and you don't pick a DE at 8. You don't pick one at 42. Let's say Cam Jordan comes back in this scenario too. Can you just run it back with the same guys? Can you get by with the same 4 guys and complementary pieces? Chris Rumpf level compromise.
You can. You can just because of the alignment. What you can't get by with is zero interior push. Again, the edge pressure that's going to come just from that wide 9 alignment. The way that they have the tackles set up, that alignment alone does so much for edge rush guys. See, it was different in Dennis Allen's defense because of the technique that he asked the defensive lineman to play. Chase Young was kind of not, you won't say frustrated about it, but they pointed out like the responsibilities of the defensive ends in that system is why the Saints always had to force drafting guys high because they had to be elite run stoppers, elite pass rushers. The technique that they had to play with, they had to be 6'5", 275 in that range. And it makes it for like a unicorn edge guy that you're looking for. Whereas in Staley's defense, that prototype has changed, right? And so you can find those players without having to allocate high amounts of resources to them based on their responsibilities. That wide 9 alignment is like, look, just go get after the edge rusher. You ain't got to really play the run too much. You got to set the edge sometimes. But when it's time to get after the quarterback, you don't really have to chip that often. Just get your angle, get into the back. But again, that problem with that edge rush is that if you don't have the interior rush, and then the pocket doesn't collapse from the interior and the quarterback can just step up, it really negates the edge rush. So yes, you can get by with that same 3 Even if you listen, even if you did that three and then in a year decided you wanted to get a running mate for Chase Young, you could always just sign another one. They'll have money, but you don't have to force edge rusher this year.
Complementary pieces, or they gotta add.
Well, I mean, let's look at the needs. Like there's running back, there's wide receiver, there's tight end.
Guard is there's can't ignore.
There's cornerback, there's pass rusher, and these are all positions that are going to cost something to address. Those five, they aren't going to sign someone and draft someone at 8 and at 42 at all 5 spots. So there's going to be a spot that isn't addressed to satisfaction, and whatever it is, I mean, that might end up being something that you end up post draft too. Like some of these guys might be older. That might be where you're hitting that market on some of these positions. But
that's when you become the 14th NFL team to sign Jadeveon Clowney to a 1-year deal.
Like somebody, though, like one of those spots, like one of the 4 really costs a lot, but like one of them, there's going to be at least one probably at the end of day 2 where you're like, man, they didn't. I don't know. Like, what are they going to do with this position? It just is what it is.
Young's ascendancy and Carl Granderson kind of returning to form at the end of last season, does that make you feel better about you don't have to overreact? You want to hit it, but if that becomes the musical chairs position that you didn't hit, and your third and fourth guys are Cam Jordan and Chris Rumph, or if not Cam Jordan, some other Cam Jordan level third DE. Can you get by for a year and be like, damn, I wish we would have done better, but we couldn't address it all in 1 year?
I feel weird about this one because theoretically, wide receiver and defensive end, if they address those two, are the ones that I think make me feel the best about the team. I think part of my thing with defensive end is that I just look at the draft and I'm like so unsure about all the guys. Like I really like Ruben Bain, but I know that there's issues there. So is he the answer? I'm not convinced that it's like, yes, you have to take this guy at 8. He's a guy that I think you could take at 8 and it could turn out great. And I'm not against taking him at 8, but I'm not fighting for him at 8. I'm not like, oh, they got to know, like, please let Ruben Bain fall. Like every time I do one of these mock drafts, I almost hope he's gone so that I just don't have to make the decision. So I think that's part of it. I like David Bailey, but I don't have to have him. Like the sweet spot for that one is like, I wish they were picking at like 20 so they could get the Messidor from Miami.
See, that there's that extra focus on the edge rush talent. Watch this. I'm on PFF. I'm looking at the premium stats for the 2020 season with the Rams, right? Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd led in pass rush snaps, right? Defensive interior. Aaron Donald had 606 pass rush snaps, right? Leonard Floyd had 548. They were your 2 highest sack leaders, with Donald having 17 and 13. Would you believe that the next 3 highest pass rush snaps came from Michael Brockers, Morgan Fox, Sebastian Joseph Day, right? All 3 defensive interior guys. Then came the edge rush snaps from Samson Ebukam at 179, 164. Again, you're looking at this Staley scheme, and it's like they're trying to apply Dennis Allen principles as far as the edge rush talent, not realizing that this scheme doesn't truly rely on elite pressure from the edges because of the alignment. It again puts more emphasis on the defensive interior. And those guys, that number again, 2,357 pass rush snaps last year. 54% of them came from the defensive interior, those 3 defensive linemen. 45% came from the edge. So it's not a terrible allocation of resources focusing on edge. It's just not understanding the scheme that you're dealing with and how best to deploy those resources to get the best out of the defense. Personally, Ruben Bain would be the guy I would go with because Ruben Bain would be able to play the left defensive end position. If I wasn't able to sign someone like John Franklin Myers, and I had to, let's say, focus on cornerback, I'd maybe sign a Reek Woolen, and then I would pray to Moses that Ruben Bain would end up sliding because he would fill that Aaron Donald type role. from that left defensive end spot, which is where Aaron Donald played. Aaron Donald wasn't oversized. He was sick. He was what, 6'1", 280, 290 pounds, right? So he didn't have this immaculate length, right? But he also rushed from the outside. There were a lot of alignments that Staley ran that had Aaron Donald as one of the edge rushers opposite from Leonard Floyd, right? So when you look at someone like Ruben Bain, would he play that alignment in base? Sure, you can have him as that 5 technique, and he could arguably play the 4 technique in the base. A little bit undersized, but he's also 6'3", 270 and strong as hell, so he could fit. But when those alignments shift to where he wants to have like a Chase Young as the outside linebacker, you can always shift Ruben Bain to the outside. So when I look at the way that this scheme is set up and the type of hybrid players it works with, Ruben Bain would actually fit in that spot.
Me, like he's 25. He's got some knee stuff. But he's a good player, and the value feels great. Doesn't feel like you're putting too much in. Doesn't feel like you're overextending yourself. That's where I kind of would want to be ideally this year, not at 8. So like defensive end has been kind of that one position where every time I go through like a simulation of an offseason or whatever, I kind of like put it on the back burner when normally that would be probably the first thing I'd be trying to do.
Probably been so I'm in the middle. Part of the reason I put this on the script today is I just published yesterday the offseason position rankings. I do this every year, and I think defensive end has been 1 or 2 like every year I've ever done it. And I mean that's dating back to the Super Bowl contending years and everything. It's just such an enormous position that you need to fill all the time. This year I had it 6. So I'm kind of like, or I think I had it at 5 and running back at 6, but it's like, it's not screaming as urgent as it has in other years. I think the answer for me is if you re-sign Cam Jordan, then I think you can afford, I think that buys you time.
Yeah.
If you don't re-sign Cam Jordan, I think I need at least a Cam Jordan level veteran in free agency. I don't want to go into the draft with Chase Young, Carl Granderson, and no proven number 3, because then I think it might force me to reach in the draft.
Are you betting on Cam repeating?
Not necessarily, but I just feel a little better if he's my 3rd. Now I still might draft David Bailey or Ruben Bain, but I know that I've got a top 3 I feel pretty good about it makes me feel better about not forcing a pick in the draft.
I feel good about Cam, but I don't feel good about Cam at the same time. Like, just I don't know what to expect. It's a tough one. Yeah, we'll see. It's a very interesting year. Kind of moving on from this too, but staying in the same basket here.
Yep, SaintsFootballTalk.com. Do the Saints have to add another edge rusher? Not necessarily have to, but depending on how things fall, they do need another pressure player. Just to round out those stats, pass rush snaps. Check this out again. This is for the Saints for 2025. Nathan Shepard had the most pass rush snaps with 390 defensive interior. Brian Brzee had the second most, 371, right? Defensive interior. Next came Carl, Cam, and Chase with 338, 336, 285. And then boom, Devon Godshaw, Jonah Williams, Jonathan Bullitt, 177, 162, 116. Then Chris Rumpf down there at 91. So again, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see 5 interior players there, and then your 3 edges, right? But you again see a lot of pass rush snaps from the interior players. As long as you have your big 3 in Cam, Chase, and Granderson, it would be more wise to focus on having Shepard taking fewer pass rush snaps, right? Having maybe Brian Brzee taking